This is Matchweek. You are joined by myself, Artie Amini. We discuss everything soccer from the highs and the lows in the sporting week to the news that is relevant to you. And we are back. This is Match Week. Now, I know you guys are looking and wondering, you're not in the studio. I know, guys, I apologize. The studio is closed for a little while because of Thanksgiving. People are going back home, it's going to be a little bit difficult. So we had to go over onto Discord and record the episode today. And today I'm joined by two very, how would I describe them? Are they, they are special in my heart. No,
handsome.
They're special guests, but in my heart, just like the boys from last week. But anywho, I am joined by now Hazir. Now, say what's up.
What's up, everyone?
And I'm also joined by Krasniqi. Yuli, how we doing?
Good. Pleasure to be here.
Perfect. Now, good dice. Now, guys, today we are discussing club structures and exactly how it works within the world of soccer, right? Because a lot of times we hear about complaints of how clubs are ran, maybe how money's being spent, or how stuff is structured. So I thought I'd bring on the, financial wizard, as you can see on the screen right below me, and then also our how would I describe you? You want to help me out here?
Our devil's advocate.
Our devil's advocate. The guy is gonna find some reason just to disagree with you. So
yeah.
Let's make it a fun one, guys. So just to start off, we are going to be discussing the managers. Well, actually, no. I was going to go managers first, but let's switch it up. We're going to do starting off with how to properly define a strong starting 11. So we're going to start from the whole club structure, from starting 11 all the way up to the owners of a football club, right? So if we're going to talk about a strong starting 11, what are some of the few things that we can say makes it up?
If you're asking me a strong starting 11, individually, all the players on the pitch kind of have to be the best at what they're assigned to do by the coach. But the other aspect to that is they all actually have to be able to play together well, be able to have chemistry on the field with one another. So I think it's both individually, each player being the best at what they do, but also at the same time trying to have the right chemistry with every single player. It's like when you do your pro clubs thing, you want all the lines to be green, right? That's the idea.
Yes, exactly.
That's literally what it is. It's called chemistry.
Yeah. It's the best way to explain it. I think you mean Ultimate Team if we're talking about chemistry.
Whatever it was, yeah. Ultimate Team. You're right. I
got I gotta be here. We're a strong, independent organization. We can't be making mistakes.
You're right. Absolutely right. Fact check me. Make sure to always fact check me.
For sure. Yuli, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah, I say, one word now, it's that chemistry. That's the most important thing to me. Before I look at actual technical ability on the field, I'm looking at how do the players gel together. It's all about that mentality. Can I anticipate where you're going to be, what space you're going to occupy, what pass should I play? I think it's all about the mentality and the chemistry. That's the first place I start with how I'm going to build a good starting 11.
Yeah, those are valid points here. It leans into the thing that we always talk about with players, how they can always be the best player in the world, but if they have the better mindset and the stronger mental capabilities, it can really put them up there within the team.
Oh yeah, I'm just gonna cut you off. Sorry. Look at Ajax a couple years ago in their Champions League run to the semis. It's it was Ajax.
That
whatever.
team.
But that was all chemistry.
But
dude, that's really
the funny thing is, though, it's so crazy.
And even now, today they're playing amazing football.
just a little like side tidbit for all the viewers and the listeners. So far, I think that Ajax team has been mentioned within all 4 episodes of Matchweek so far.
Dude, they were so good, dude. Like
I know.
they were knocking out big names everywhere.
I'm still fathomed by the fact that somehow Tottenham Hotspur knocked them out of the Champions League. It still makes no sense to me.
So if I may add some personal bias here and answer this question truthfully and less philosophically, if that's even a word, and I said that correctly, I think a starting XI starts at its midfield, and that may come to the dismay of many listeners here, or to the tune of many who play the midfield position. But I truly believe that a starting XI is defined by its midfield. Can they control the tempo of the game? And can they control possession of the ball? And so, in my opinion, the crux of the team begins with my midfield, and then I'm going to build my philosophy around that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. There's been a lot of teams in the past where their midfield has been their strongest part, but then sort of to counter arguments, it's like for every team, it's always different. It's either the tip of the trident with attackers, or it's that solid defensive base that's just helped keep teams together. So at the end of the day, it all depends, going into our next topic, of how a manager runs the team, right? Sort of just a nice little cheeky transition. We're sort of just go over like what does the real manager actually, the role it plays in the club, and how does he really affect that starting 11, right?
I mean, if you really want like the right answer on that, you should ask Ole. Just throwing that out there.
The United podcast was last week now. We've already done enough discussion on Manchester United. I think we can leave them for now. I did a whole entire Manchester United analysis last week. If you guys want to hear me talk about them, by all means go there. But new topic, boys. Come on.
Dude, that was just a little cheap shot I had to throw in there.
Yeah, okay. Juventus. All right. I'm good.
All right, that's fair. I mean, the manager's pretty much just as important as anyone playing the game. Any of the 11 players on the field at any given moment. The manager's pretty much, except in like Bayern's case, the manager's like the 12th player, right? Right? Like that's really like what it should come down to as. And manager has to like be able to like lead. You know what I mean? It's like I'm always gonna bring up underdogs when it comes to things like this, because like for like the starting 11, like look at Leicester a couple years ago. Like that was the same thing. Like that was all the manager, right? That was all the manager. I mean, he had a great season. Like Ole last season. Ole did great for what he had.
But I think if we're going to
players lose faith, and that's what happens.
I think if we're also going to tap into that Ole thing, I think the league was way different last year, and I just also think the team was way different last year. Because if you look at United this season, I talked about this last week, but I'll hit the nail again in the coffin. I'll hit the nail in the coffin again. It's a Ronaldo-centered team, so the team's going to perform way differently with certain players. You know this with Juventus, right? When you play with Ronaldo is everything. So for example, with United, Bruno was affected heavily by that. So then now it's just a whole different level of playing styles that we're dealing with, in a whole different field we're playing in now. It's a different pitch, it's a different ball game,
No, definitely.
Well, what I'll say, Nehat, is Bayern's coach is definitely not the 12th man. Maybe the 13th man. In Germany, the 12th man is always the fan.
I said in Bayern's case, the manager isn't the 12th player.
Yeah, so in Germany, the 12th man is always the fan, because we've got the strongest fan group. I stand by that. But in my opinion, one thing that is essential in a manager, the obvious aside, have to be able to, bring the best out of a player, help develop their youth, etc. I think what defines a good manager is how to manage egos. Because today, think about if you're a manager on Real Madrid and you've got a starting XI that's as strong as your bench as well. So you need to be able to bring in star players, not only for the appeal of the fans, but for the ability to be able to compete on multiple competitions. And how do you comfortably sit someone who can easily start elsewhere? So I think that's an essential skill of a manager in today's day and game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Most definitely. But that also just goes into other roles of a manager, right? Because it's the guy who can manage a team, right? Who's the manager, gets everyone together, but also in those tough times in a game when you've been working on something for so long in training sessions and it's just not clicking, to be able to make those changes of like, hey guys, we're gonna do this instead, right? Sort of like analyzing the game, being like, hey, you know what, this isn't working. We're gonna switch to this. I need X, Y, and Z to do this, and in order for that to happen, that management comes in for the player to believe like, okay, if the manager wants me to do this, I believe that it's the right thing to do.
Another, I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but one other essential skill, in my humble opinion, on a manager is you need to be able to motivate your players. Simply the word motivation.
Day in, day out too.
And my example there is not in defeat, because I think it's easiest to be motivated in defeat, but when in triumph, how do you remain motivated? And my analogy there is, picture Barcelona winning the treble, or Bayern Munich winning the treble, or in their historic seasons winning the sextuple. How do you stay motivated once you've won and achieved everything there is to win or achieve? And that's what differentiates, a high quality manager and a generational manager who's going to build a dynasty. How do I motivate my players to come in and repeat the success of last year?
Yeah, I mean, most definitely, you're not wrong about in that case at all.
No.
But then here's the thing, right? When we're talking about the manager, I think the one role that gets forgotten a lot of the times is the role they play within the youth academy, right? So, as we know, a lot with certain clubs like United, an Ajax, or a Barcelona, even Bayern right now are having a little youth renaissance coming on. We see that the youth academy can be a direct link into the first team, and the manager being able to manage that too, not as in depth, right? But he brings his own coaching staff for it, sets up plans and roles. So how do we see that as a sort of a big undertaking in itself for a lot of managers?
I mean, the biggest thing with like youth academy stuff, right, is all of these players are there for like a reason, right? They for their age group, they're like, I just don't know other way to put it, but like pros, right? For their like age, right? Like that's the entirety of like being in such a good youth academy. So you see these potential stars, pretty much almost every single one of them is a potential star at that young age, right? And then I think for the same thing with the youth coaches, like the manager, like Yuli said before, with the motivation, right? Keeping the youth players motivated, right? Because it is that direct link into the first team. So you have to worry about how all these kids are growing into their own player, because they don't know like their position yet. Like they're good at it, but they haven't found like the love for it. And like, I don't know if I'm like saying that correctly, but like they could end up falling in love with a different position, right? That they're just for whatever reason naturally better at. Like how Lewandowski was a defender for Poland, right? If I'm not mistaken at first, and then he goes on to be one of the best strikers like in the world. You know what I mean? So I think that's another thing coaches constantly have to look for as well. It's pretty much like managing your own team at that point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
most definitely. I mean, you've explained it like very thoroughly. Couldn't disagree there.
yeah, and sorry, RD. In my opinion, any club who seeks longevity and success in the long term, the most important thing in that plan is your youth development. You can always look at the transfer market, but when you can't predict, is COVID going to happen? Are we going to perform well and have a lot of winnings to be competitive in terms of financial fair play in the marketplace? Is the player we want going to be available that year? You can't time that stuff. What you can time is investing in your youth development. So I think what's especially important, not just at the coach level, but the entire club organization level, is to invest in your youth, and that's what's going to give you longevity and success. And in terms of a manager, knowing when it's time to pass the baton, it's not easy to be a Louis van Gaal and let's bring in Mueller from the academy and give him a start, or Bastian Schweinsteiger and that's just a Bayern example. But what about Pep Guardiola coming into a team with, Samuel Eto'o and Zlatan Ibrahimovic, and having to make the decision that, we should let them go, let the likes of Ronaldinho go, so we can bring in a Xavi and Iniesta and a Lionel Messi. So having the courage and the understanding of knowing, when it's time to kind of pass the baton, is also essential in the prolongation of your youth academy.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, who could disagree with that, right? It's like I remember a lot of people at that time at Barcelona. It's a phenomenal, outstanding team, and you have the likes of Thierry Henry, Ronaldinho, Eto'o, Zlatan, all within that era of that transition, and just just flipping that team. Really, they did a whole like sort of rebuild on its own when it wasn't necessarily needed. It's just they decided that we're in for the long run, and we still have that talent.
And one other thing I'll add is essential, and again, in terms of an organization, is you never try to lose your identity. And as a Bayern fan, I will biasly use Bayern as an example, but Bayern's goal is always to maintain a core German contingent. We want the majority of our starting 11 to be German nationals who are representing the German national team. And likewise in Spain, the large majority of their team comes from the likes of Barcelona, Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid, who all have great academies in and of themselves. La Masia is one of the best in the world. So as a team, being able to understand, hey, in a given year, I may have made some great signings, but I've diluted the concentration of my core, and whether that's German or Spaniard, is just an example. But making sure I continue to allow my reserves, my development academies to have the opportunity to break into the first team and build the identity of my team, I think is really essential.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, another person that like sort of looks onto this role and to the team and seeing how our youth develops and where some of them even go is the sporting director or the director of football at a lot of these clubs. And a lot of times, the supporters and the fans, they don't really understand how the director of football operates. They don't see exactly what he does for the teams, right? So could you guys sort of like help me explain this to the people, right? Like what should they know, what shouldn't they know?
Well, the director of football is pretty much kind of what the manager doesn't do, right? Things that are quote unquote outside of the manager's like control. So that can go anywhere from recruiting to scouting to contract negotiations, like all things kind of like that is what the director of football is responsible for, finding the staff to recruit. It's like when you're kind of like a coach, like you're playing the FIFA career thing, you're doing like a coach, you're kind of like the director of football, as in you're the one getting scouts, you're the one doing contract negotiations, like kind of like all those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. That's the thing, right? It's like the best way to sometimes sort of sum it up too is that basically when the manager makes a shopping list of who he wants, he hands it to this guy, right? He's like, find me
Yeah.
this player or the player that resembles him exactly to help fix what I need for
Yeah.
this team. And then he goes out there. He first checks the youth academy, and he goes and delegates with the clubs, and he helps sort of set the foundations for the club, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, and I think Nat defined that perfectly. In the three characteristics he mentioned, development, scouting, negotiations, those are all vital skills for a director of football to have. Your coach is responsible for the technicals, analyzing your next opponent. What are the weaknesses in their game? What technical approach will give us the advantage? How can I motivate my players, etc.? They're involved in the very zoomed in scope of the game. The director of football more manages the operations, in terms of contract negotiations. How can I keep people happy with their salaries while also keeping our club's financial goals in mind? If I give too much leeway to one player in terms of wages, what happens the next time we sign a star player? They have to consider not the technicals each game in every week, but holistically look at the season and the long-term goals of the plan and fit their signings, their contract negotiations, and the academy and all that in its plans. So I'd say it's more of an operations role that's really important for the development of the club.
Yeah, for sure. Because a lot of these times, like if we look at a Barcelona right now, right, this sort of like fell wayward where everybody's getting monster wages, like monster transfers, players really not being utilized properly, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah,
Exactly. Yep.
it's
Barcelona is a
literally
perfect
exactly what it
case.
was. Yeah,
They're the best worst case scenario of what happens to a club when things are done right. Like they're the best sample
yeah,
size to look at and see like,
yeah,
okay, wow, this is why we do X, Y, and Z, right? This is why sort of let's say for Liverpool, for example, they have a strict wage structure where they sort of see like, hey, like a Sadio Mane and a Salah, one of them might leave this summer because we have to make sure that our wage bill doesn't get tampered with, which is like
yeah,
astronomical to some
yeah.
people because it's like they look at a Mo Salah or Sane and they're like, yo, they deserve whatever they ask for. They're like one of the most like underpaid players in the Premier League in comparison to other players. So it's a really, really difficult job and a difficult line to draw for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, people's obviously most, not even most, pretty much all of these players like love play the game because they love it, right? Like money's pretty much second to any of them. But, it does play in definitely a factor when you go on to break your first Mo Salah's case, right? First, second season, I'm not really sure. He comes to the Prem. It's like, oh, okay, like a couple games, he's like on a hot streak. Oh, okay, like this is gonna fall off, whatever. Then he goes on to break the league goal record, like his first, second season.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like, how do you keep him, a humble man, plays because he loves the game, but one of the best players in the world, if not the best player in the world right now? Like, how do you keep him? How do you do him right with his salary? You know what I mean? Without ruining your wage bill as a
Yeah,
club.
like for Salah's case, it's like, all right, he has a contract until he's like 29, 30. So now when they do
Yes.
this contract extension, it's like, how much is he still going to be worth when he's like 31, 32, 33, 34, right? Like
Yeah.
those 4 years, is he still going to be that record-breaking Salah, or is he going to be a portion of what he was? And in most cases, it's like a lot of clubs will take like a 12 to 15 goal
Oh,
contribution
absolutely.
player. But in this case, it's
Absolutely.
way different.
I mean, like when you look at 15 goal contributions, I immediately thought of Giroud, right?
Yeah,
Like
for
for whatever
sure.
reason, he was the first player to come to my mind. He will get like you need a goal, whatever it is. He will most likely get it for you in the whatever almost impossible way for whatever reason.
Yeah.
His scorpion kicks like just out of nowhere
That
things, but
scorpion
he
kick though,
he
it
gets the
was
job done.
so it was like it was
Offsides,
great.
offsides.
Yeah, offsides. But also what sucked is that in the same match day, Henrik Mkhitaryan, when he used to play for Man United, scores a scorpion kick, right? Where
He was
it's like
offside.
no, but Mkhitaryan wasn't offsides though. So
Yeah,
when yeah,
absolutely. You're
well
bugging. You're bugging.
no,
Let's
but
not get into that.
Mkhitaryan when he scored his, right, it wasn't as clean as Giroud's, but still effective and looked nice. And Giroud like he just does his, but his is like more clinical and clean, and he just like bags it no problem, right? Like so I understand exactly what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
he just gets the job done. He's gonna score that 15 goals. Is what I'm saying
Or
at
like
least.
even he'll get like those 7 goals and like those like what like 8 assists. Like he'll get 7 goals, eight
Yeah,
assists for the
he'll
15.
create the 15 goals. Like
Mm-hmm.
you just know it's gonna get done.
Yeah, I mean I think it was just breaking down perfectly. Manager of football. I mean the director of football. He operational plans all him. Scouting recruitment falls under this guy, and then also the wage structure and contract negotiations. It's a big thing, but then a lot of the stuff he has to do has to get approved by the board. Like the club's board, the people who are like there in the office who we sort of like ridicule most of the time. And how do we explain them, right? Because like they are crucial to the club, but we're always like like we look at them like, you know what I'm saying?
I mean, as fans, that's all. The board of directors is the business, right? Like they're the business. They're the what's going on and off the pitch. How do we look good as a brand? How do we keep sales up? How do we keep fans up? How do we keep all this revenue, right? That we have. Like, how do we gonna make more revenue next year? Like, that's all their thing. And like to us as fans, we're like, nah, I just want to watch soccer. Like, you know what I mean? We're not thinking about it. Most people aren't thinking about it. Like what's going on behind the scenes all the time.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah, and just to add to what Nehat said, I agree. A board is interested in the club's operations and their core operations. You know, like Nat said, how do I expand my market share? I'm successful right now in Europe, but how do I expand my market share in North America, Latin America, etc., to be able to build my revenue? When I have excess revenue, what am I doing with it? Am I using it to make a massive star acquisition? Who's going to require board approval because the cash outlay is so massive that it warrants that? Or am I going to turn that into my academy? And alternatively, in terms of deal sponsorships, who do I want to sponsor with? Each club, sure, they might have some small sponsors and several of those, but each club has a few large sponsors, if not one. Which club am I actually gonna which company am I gonna put on the front of my jersey? Those are decisions that the board is putting together. Who do we line with in terms of vision and mission, and again, financially, who is going to compensate us the best with regards to those targets in mind as well. So in terms of money in operations and longevity, that's what your board plays in. And then in the day-to-day operations, they're the ones who are going to approve, who's going to be your sporting director and have your, transfer targets in mind, or who's going to be your coach and develop the technical acumen of your team. So they're essentially important in the operations of the club.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think the best example of like what happens when a board goes wrong is Newcastle, right? If we look at Newcastle right now, it's like, yes, they finally got the new owners. Yes, they finally got everything new coming through, but it's like, yeah, like the board got some stuff through, sales done, but like they've appointed a manager, but they don't have the like chief director of football. Like they don't have a football director of operation. Like they don't. They're missing on so much structure right now. It's like they only have like the board and the manager. They have.
I'm bugged out.
I'm,
Playing off.
for those of you who are listening, Nat's room just went dark. I think there might be, I like you just imagine a power outage, but yeah, he's still on the call.
I had to close my closet, dude. I think there's a ghost in there or something.
Oh, spooky!
Fuck that.
Oh man, that language. So if you want, I can give you a second to turn the lights back on.
No, that is quite all right. I think I'll be all right for now.
Are you sure?
Yeah, Nat's ready for bed.
He's ready for.
No. Because I'm gonna have to go across my bed. And no offense. I mean, you guys saw before the show started.
Yeah. We just
Exactly. That's right.
If you actually, you know what? How about this? We can get back onto our topic because they have to go across to more issues of why, like, for example, Newcastle is this like ideal discussion, and how we sort of just have to evaluate and see that, yes, like Newcastle now have like millions of dollars, right? They now have this way to fund, but they're still missing this big structure. So they brought in a guy like Eddie Howe, but what's the plan? Yeah, like there's no real plan there. It's like it's quick reactive decisions instead of proactive decisions. And like, would you guys agree with me that like a board has to be like proactive? They can't be reactive. They have to have a plan in place, and they have to get stuff like through and done.
No, absolutely. I mean, that's establishing a goal for you and your club, and that's pretty much what it is. If you don't have agreements, majorities, a goal of where you want to go and where you want to be in, not even next year, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, these are all things that have to be discussed like very constantly. You know what I mean? And if you don't have that amongst your board, that's just an issue, just straight up.
It's just like very straightforward. Like, yeah, this is a
Yeah,
problem.
just very
Like,
straightforward.
there's
Like you
no
can't,
there's no beating
like
around
you
the bush.
can't
It's like
have
if
50-50 splits
yeah,
in board meetings. You know what I mean? It's not like one guy wants to do one thing, another guy wants to do another thing. It's like, yeah, you can come talk and vote. Like realistically, someone has to like, there has to be
someone
something.
has to do the task. Like someone has to
Yeah,
be there for it.
someone has to make a decision on which way we're going and how it's going to play into our long future as a club.
Mhm.
And
Yuli, how we feeling right now? What are we thinking?
No, I honestly agree with Nehat. He hit all the nails right on the hammer on the nails. So yeah.
For the audience who's wondering, we sadly had to record this later at night, so we are a bit loopy.
a little tired.
So some of us are tired. Some of us have had a lot of fun tonight, so we're here to pump out a great episode for you. So
That was
you know the boards, they're basically governing the club, responsible. They exercise all the powers, but there's one person that leads it, and it's the club president. Now, before we talk about the club president, we have to take a quick break from a word from our sponsor. Hello, guys. How are we doing today? I'm sorry. I know I had to stop the podcast and give you guys an ad read. Already stop it. Look, I have something very important to tell you about, okay? We are sponsored by ITA Sports. Yes, that's right, ITA Sports. Now, you guys are wondering, what's an ITA Sports? What do they offer for you? Well, they're a local business based out of Boonton, New Jersey, where they're on Boonton Main Street, if you guys even want to check them out. And what they are is a place where you can either get some cool, different apparel than your like average Adidas or Nike, Under Armour, Puma, that jazz. And they go more with like the Arayas, the Yomas, the Hummel. And how can we forget the Umbro? Guys, they have way more to offer than I can even list off. All you have to do is go to itasportshop.com. That's itasportshop.com. itasportshop.com. And if you're a team or a business, local business, any team, they actually do wholesale apparel orders for you, as you can see on screen if you're viewing, but if you're listening, I'll describe it even better. They make apparel that is best and fitting for you, that is comfortable, and even so, sometimes the price is better than what you'll get from actually trying to get an Adidas or a Nike or anyone else. And all you have to do is just go to itasportshop.com. And then now, guys, hey, you know what? In the future, they might have some promos or some more stuff for us to give away and work with. But we have to see how we do this episode for the ad. So please go check it out. Go see it because they have really cool stuff to offer. I'll see you guys later. Bye. And we are back from our short, quick break. Yes, if you guys heard the ad read, ITA's back again. They're here to strike. I know they're a great organization. We love them for sponsoring. I just want to say thank you. And let's continue on. So, boys, club presidents, how do we feel about them?
They have a majority in what goes on, a majority say in like what goes on in the club. They're the ones who talk to the club owners about what we're doing with our brand, things like that. They're pretty much the face of any decision the club makes, which is honestly one of the most intimidating things I can think of to be able to do.
I would say who we consider like one of the most like notable club presidents out there. I would say it's Florentino Perez. Yes, no, maybe so.
Definitely one of the most notable ones for sure.
Yeah, because he's like the guy who's like he's like the Don John of like soccer, right? He tries to be like Mr. Big Man, ties with UEFA, stuff like that. And we sort of see how like even though like there's a director of football and the board, he really does have like final say for what happens, you know.
Of course.
Like,
What I'll say is, the president is kind of the bridge between the board of directors and the more day-to-day operations of the club, the director, the coach. So they have to bridge the two, be able to communicate what the board says to the players and vice versa. So, they have to please two parties. So they're essential in their role. And Audi, I didn't think of it, but you're right. I 100% agree. Perez is probably a perfect example of the most notable president.
Yeah, because he's like the face of it. He'll take it on the chin. He'll be like, "Yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah,
These are our
straight up.
players. Like there's nothing you could do about it." Like he's the most like ego trip club president you'll ever see, right? And then I hate harping back to this, but if we look at Barcelona's club presidents recently, it's like they've noticed issues that arise with teams, and they just think like pump money. Oh, we don't have it. Pump it. Pump it. Pump it. Do whatever we gotta do. We'll violate the rules. We don't care. And they're sort of like the ones who make those kind of decisions, right? Because there's people who they have on their staff to sort of analyze stuff and be like, hey, this might not be the right idea, but they can go against it, right? It's like having the president of a nation and then having its cabinet members, right? The cabinet's the board, and then the club president is the president of that nation, right? At the end of the day, they do get like final say for a lot.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, they wouldn't be the president, you know what I mean, of the club if it wasn't for any other reason than that.
And the one thing I've noticed interestingly is that a lot of clubs will like vote in the president, or like they'll have like long tenure vote-ins. So like a Florentino Perez, I'm not exactly sure about Real Madrid's system, but I do know that a lot of La Liga clubs, they do it by either an annual or biannual vote for club presidents. And as we all know, Perez has been there for how long now? Like at least a decade, right? Like I remember him back
for as long
in,
as I've been actually watching soccer.
I know, right? Like back
As
back
long
to
as I
that,
can
like
remember.
back from like what was it when like Ozil first went to Real? That's like my earliest memory of him I could think of.
Jeez,
Yeah,
I forgot that was a thing.
I know, right?
Was that Real?
That's man, talk about the staggering difference between a team of
Oh
then
my
and now.
God, dude. It's just, it's. I don't know what it was about watching that last generation of players, right? It was something about watching Drogba, Lampard, Schweinsteiger, like all of them play
I
that just felt so much
I
better
know
about like
the
watching the
thing
game.
is, I think that like we had them like so like idolized and like sort of like on a pedestal.
So rightfully so.
Yeah,
Like,
because like we gotta understand, right? Like we started watching everything from a young age. So from a
Yeah.
younger age, when you see these type of performances from these older players, we put them on the pedestal. Whereas like these players that we saw come up, we sort of grew up with them. Like we sort of grew up with like their playing style, so we always had them as like the thought of like, oh, they were just that guy. Whereas like the kids younger than us, they're gonna see that and they'll be like, wow, like idolize, right? Like it's crazy to think
Yeah.
how like
yeah,
how
absolutely.
some kids can idolize a Vincent Company, right? Because like they think of him as like a class center back, whereas like us, we would idolize more of like a Collier.
Maguire.
And I would idolize Company as a class center back.
Don't-
Listen,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, hold on,
the
wait.
guy,
Absolutely.
the guy's pure class.
No,
but
no,
I agree with both of you.
Love you both, but we're not skipping over that little dig he tried just throwing, right? If you guys actually listened to last week's podcast, I was making the argument of like we should just sell Harry Maguire. So that's where I stand.
Dude, I will just continue to take these stabs at you just because it's just so like Man United for whatever reason has just made it so easy to make fun of. And like
That's
it's
what
beating up a
happens
dead
when you're
horse
on the
from last
losing
week's
side for 10
podcast.
years.
It happens, like I get it, like it's just beating a dead horse from the podcast, but like it's just they make it so easy themselves.
Man, I'm about to have to take down the scarf soon because it's gonna be 21 times. That's right. Bias coming in, we'll win the league. I don't care. Anyways,
Hopefully,
that'd
be nice.
And that wouldn't be out of
That'd be
$100, but that's a different story. Anyways, so as we see a lot,
to lose the league.
so bro, AC Milan might win it.
I can't wait.
Dude, remember when
lose the league.
Manchester United played Nani at left back?
Bro, that was Ferguson.
No, we can't get into this.
Ferguson did some crazy things with Manchester United. It was like mind blowing.
I was talking to Kasim like last week, and I was looking at like Man United's like just like record. Sir Alex Ferguson, I don't know when he started, but like I'm looking at it and it's like seventh, sixth,
Oh yeah,
fifth, like when he first
1985,
started. When he
1986, around
first
there.
started, he's getting like sixth, fourth, you know what I mean? And then you just go on this string of first, second, first, second, first, and it's just like insane. Like the record that man held when I was actually looking at it, like I didn't process it
It's
before,
mind blowing.
but I was like, oh my god. And then you immediately the season he leaves, seventh. And I started dying.
Well, all
Well,
I'll
I
say is, I'm not a United fan, and I miss the days where they were at the top because all my best friends are United
Very
fans.
mentioned.
But what I'll say is, even in his last few seasons, Ferguson, the cracks were there.
yeah,
To show you, I remember that season very well. Robin van Persie and Wayne Rooney always bailed United out in Fergie time. But the cracks were there. Their defense wasn't solid. They were conceding a lot of goals, and it was a matter of, hey, when you no longer have two of the most, star players of our generation leading the front of your attack, then what? And that's essentially what happened. He was able to get, for lack of better words, bailed out by the genius of Wayne Rooney and Robin van Persie in his last few seasons. And when he was gone, the cracks in his foundation, the defense, the midfield, really showed.
yeah, because I think United, it like, even though I hate talking about them all the time, because like I did a whole feature length, and I don't want to like keep going over it, but they sort of like, they are what this topic is, right? It's how a club should be ran, and Sir Alex, the manager, just shows how much power a manager has, covered that cracks for the longest time. It wasn't just those like last 2 seasons, Yuli. It was, I would say, like 5 years of like just constantly like, oh, we'll just pave this over, like make sure the owners will look bad, make sure the club's still making money, like things like this. And like Sir Alex Ferguson is sort of like what we're about to go into our next topic. It's the owner's favorite manager. He'll get you the results and not complain about the ownership whatsoever. And as we've seen in recent times, what football fans have high expectations for an owner of a football club, and just for sort of someone from the outside looking in wants to know, what exactly are those expectations?
Um, I mean, if you own the club, you're owning it because this is something you love, right? You care for this. It's like you're like it's like your child. You know what I mean? Like I feel like that's like kind of what it means to be a club owner. You want to see this thing grow into something so successful, right? And like how do you do these things? You have to A, ensure profits, and B, you have to be able to have the necessary funds as club owners to make them operate on such a elite level for like so long.
Because I'm trying to think of the best way to explain it. Because if you look at the comparative owners, right? Let's look at Chelsea's Roman Abramovich. Man
Yeah,
loves a club. All he wants to do is make sure that club's playing great,
sure.
making him money is the second priority. The club winning is the first priority. And
Correct.
as we can see, it's like we want that to be the priority, right? We want to say like, hey, the manager just loves the team. He wants everything for that team. But sadly, if we look at clubs like a Manchester United, a City, a Newcastle, a PSG,
Yeah,
even as of late, like Arsenal, like a lot of these like owners, they don't care. They just want their money, right? If we look at the United owners, they bought Manchester United in like 2001, 2002, and ever since then, like United's been making money, but those owners has been taking money from the club, right? So
correct.
they've been the way how they've been just like taking out loans on the ownership, ways they just been usurping money from the club, but yet still making it a very profitable club. It just shows how there's both ends. It's a double edged sword, right? There's the
Yeah,
love for
sure.
the team, but then there's the love for the money, right? It's really tough to sort of decipher and to break down for a lot of people.
What I'll
The
say is,
duality, man.
before even success on the pitch or success in terms of financials, the most important thing is to play attractive football. We
Yeah,
call the game of football the beautiful game because it's attractive to watch. Fans don't want to tune in and week out if you're not playing attractive football. So I think at the core ownership of the club, the number one essential factor is I want to play attractive football that's going to bring fans into my stadium, that's going to build a lifelong customer who's going to support this club in highs and in lows. So before success on the pitch, before success in terms of revenue, my goal as the owner of a club is to build an identity, and that identity is I want to play, attractive, attacking football and some kind of level of game that's going to attract players and fans week in and week out.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, here's the thing, right? Because if we talk about owner, right, like we say it, they have to care about the team. They have to pump the necessary funds that it needs to operate, right? So if we look at example again, Roman Abramovich, as soon as Chelsea are sort of on a downturn, they need to, like rejuvenate the team, fix things, have stuff updated. Roman's like, all right, how much money am I dropping now? Like he doesn't care, just ask for the number. And we see this even with like a Leicester, right? Leicester have developed themselves properly, rebuilt themselves from the ground up, from lower leagues, built their money, rebuilt they have state of the art training facilities now. Like it's more so than just like the money just doesn't just go to getting players, right? I think that's a big misconception. That player goes to that money goes to the whole entire like organization, everything around like about it and around it, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you want your players to be taken care of when they're on your training facility, when they're on the training grounds. You need proper equipment nowadays. You need the proper staffing. You want the players when they get out of their all day of training, right? When they're hours and hours on end, that when they get back into like the recovery room, all the right equipment's there for them for their muscles to be able to relax, because like, when things like that start to falter, the team starts to falter.
Yeah, most definitely. I think the best example, as we see a lot of this like Saudi, Qatari ownership, we noticed that a lot of them like to do this sports washing, where it's like, instead of people talking about the nation and their policies and what they do, instead it's like, oh, look what they're doing for a team. Look how, because of the money they're putting into this team, how it helps the area. And the two best examples of this is first Manchester City, where they got bought out by the Saudi group, and then now, excuse me, whereas now the club and the city of Manchester has been thriving, whereas the team has been nonstop top of the league, where now the city they're located in has like a lot more of like charitable fundraising. You see a lot of like jobs being built, and we see this even now with Newcastle with their new ownership group of the United Arab Emirates, where we see how now they've bought into that team to sort of for that sports watching and everything. Right, Yuli?
Yeah, no, agreed. I think you covered everything.
Yeah. And just sort of like wrap this up, I just want to like just tie the bow on this like nice little gift of information with this one thing. Has money become too much for this sport?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
yeah. You go first. You go
I
first.
have to kick this one off because I feel very passionately about this, especially as a Bayern supporter. But I think money is a very important topic in today's day and age. I'm a strong advocate of the structure in the Bundesliga, the 50+1 rule, the way the TV revenue is split. At the end of the day, all these clubs are businesses, and whether your business is a sport like football, or it's medicine, or it's manufacturing, every business is built with one goal in mind, and that goal is to build to produce a profit, to make revenue. And so that's the foundation of every club. And if, for example, we split revenue differently in terms of television revenue, advertisement, endorsements, you're giving an advantage to those clubs who get more share of that revenue. When you allow a club to be majority owned by a foreign investor who's going to pump millions, if not billions, of dollars into your club, it's going to affect the game. It's going to affect your club's identity. So I think in terms of integrity, maintaining a level of competition and building success as opposed to buying it, revenue is especially important. And I think football in general has made the right strides towards that in terms of passing financial fair play in the last decade or so. I don't know exactly when it was passed. I just know it was Bayern's board who was instrumental in that. And I guess the other main topic of today's time is in terms of a salary cap, which might be a very sensitive topic, but it's a mechanism you see in U.S. sports, an example in the NBA, and it's one that potentially may be involved in football one day. Right now the likes of Real Madrid and Barcelona, Manchester United, Manchester City, Chelsea, PSG, they can attract the best players in the world, whether they're happy in their clubs or not. They can still entice them to come via paying them absurdly higher wages, and so money is important.
For sure.
Do we put a cap on salaries? Do we put a cap on how much you can spend on signing? I think it's essential in allowing other clubs to develop an elite and competing team, and allow other players to develop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure, most definitely, because if you said it yourself, like a Barcelona and Real, like they usually do this, but as we see now, they're crumbling. They're struggling to pay the wages now. They can't offload the players. They're not following league rules. So, and even with like this all type of money being used, it's like financial fair play comes in as well. And we see how a lot of these clubs now, it's like the leagues aren't doing it, but the clubs are doing it themselves. They're making their own wage caps and wage structures because they know as soon as they hit a certain number and a certain point, they are just going to absolutely like crumble from beneath themselves, right? And as we see it, like the transfers, there's too much money in the transfers. Like players, realistically, there shouldn't be like a $234 million transfer, right, guys? Like no player should realistically be worth that much to get from one club to another. And then we have wages. If we looked at China before they implemented a wage cap, players were getting paid around $800,000 and $900,000 a week. Let's think about this for a second. A week, $800,000. Oh,
He might have just lagged.
no, yeah, he might have lagged out for a second. We're just gonna give it.
Would you mind if I take a stab at this though, really quick?
Yeah, no worries. Go ahead. We'll keep it talking. We'll keep it going.
So I know how you just brought up the players, right? He was saying you can entice all these players to come by just paying them absurd amount of money, and like, yeah, his Discord just crashed. He just texted me.
Yeah, Discord crashed.
It just is that. But when you go to look at a starting 11 of Manchester City, right? I'm just gonna put it right there. Most expensive team, a market value of $832,700,000. And that's just what they were worth on the market. Like that was literally just their market value. And no offense, it's like that was the other problem is I forgot who was it David Luiz who got sold for like $60 million as defenders or whatever. Like, dude, the market just like got this huge inflation. And now you end up with like how much? No, I'm just gonna like this is just the simplest example, right? How much did you guys pay for Harry
Maguire? We overpaid. I think we paid 84 million British pounds. Defender. So I think we paid around like $87 million.
Yeah. So he's the most expensive defender in the world.
Yeah.
Right. And so unrightfully so.
Because there's these unrealistic taxes, right? It's like, oh, the British tax, homegrown tax, oh, your transfer within league, that tax that clubs put on. Where it's ridiculous. And like your point with David Luiz, if you look at a lot of sports analysts and financial accountants, they sort of look it over and they see that this transfer inflation didn't start with that 234 million Neymar transfer, right? It actually started with that 84 with how much was David Luiz again?
I don't know if it was 50 million or
I think
something.
Yeah, he
between
was.
50 and 60. It was somewhere between 50 and 60,
If I
which was
actually check,
absurd as a defender. Like, dude, $60 million at the time for a defender was insane to think about. Because at the time, that's when Messi was like $100 million, right? So, if I'm not mistaken, am I right?
Yeah.
Messi was like 110, $120 million, somewhere.
well, Messi didn't.
So,
Well, no one paid for Messi though. Messi was a free transfer.
but I mean, like his value.
Oh yeah, his value. Barcelona
Like
had him like. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. He was of value. Like he had a hundred. I think it was $120 million value. I probably a lot more. I'm just whatever. And like now it's like anybody's gonna take Messi over David Luiz, right? And
Yeah.
you'd be stupid not to. So saying David Luiz is worth half of what Messi was at the time or whatever it was is just
Mind-boggling because
insane.
I
So
just
now it's like that's stupid. Messi gets pumped up to $300 million is his market value, and no
yeah.
club can afford that.
So I just got the official number for us. It's $54.45 million David Luiz left for, and that was
Yeah.
that domino that sort of
What year? What year was that?
that was 2013, 2014. Yeah, July 1st, 2014.
And
And then he
so
left to go back to Chelsea 2016, August 30 August 20 August 31st, 2016, and he left for $38.5 million.
here I have it. 2014. Messi was worth $132 million.
Yeah, exactly. That's
Like what?
yeah, I know. And then
What?
we had Jack Grealish this summer who just left for $100
Don't
million.
even-
I know.
Like,
Don't get me wrong, like a lot of these players are phenomenal, right? Like transfers make
players.
sense,
Good
but
players, but like really 115.
it was so crazy because like
Yeah.
back in the day, I remember where
Really?
everyone talked about that Gareth Bale move and how they're like, oh, that money, wow, it's big money, that's crazy, but it was only like what 80 million.
80 million, and it
Think
was
about
literally worth every
well,
single dollar.
yeah, what they won 4 Champions Leagues with Gareth Bale in that team, like.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It was worth literally every single
But
dollar.
also
He
think
brought in
about
so much money to that
think about how crazy the statement I just made was. He was only 80 million.
$80 million.
Think about that. Only as if like, oh, nothing, right? But like realistically, I think what was
Today?
it?
Oh my, 80 million for a Gareth Bale?
Yeah, a
At that
guarantee.
time?
Yeah, no. That
Anybody's throwing $80 million.
even Holland right now, people are trying to throw 70 million to Dortmund to get him because that's the bargain. Because he has the release clause for like 60 million euros or some sort, but the number that Dortmund would actually like to throw up is in the hundreds. Like,
Oh yeah, absolutely. Oh,
like
absolutely.
blows my
Because you know
mind.
what? Someone's paying for it.
But like,
Holland's only $100 million right now.
but realistically, the only
That's
people
fine.
who have that money is either one of
Are
the 3 Prem
big
clubs,
Correct.
the PSG,
Correct.
and Bayern, maybe. But Bayern would never spend that money.
No, Bayern wouldn't spend that money. Bayern likes to have their homegrown raised.
Not well. They also love to
like to have
farm the Bundesliga. They'll look at some other club there.
They've torn the poor league apart, but I really don't want to get into that.
I mean, poor Yuli, he left. His recording crashed.
That's why I don't want. It's not going to be fun if I get into it and he can't even defend himself.
I know, right? Because
So
he's
not
the
going to get into
biggest
it. But
Bayern fan I know.
that was wrong what Bayern did to that club, literally poaching players.
Dortmund,
It was literally so sad, dude. It was literally so sad. But
what can we do?
I think of like wages and stuff, like I look at like Juventus, right? How many of Juventus players that like grew there and developed as their own, made them name for themselves at Juventus? Juventus got them free transferred.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like Juventus really like doesn't buy players. Like
they dropped that money for Ronaldo, but that's the Bala they got from
you're getting
Palermo.
$100 million for Ronaldo.
Yeah, I mean,
like like $100 million for Ronaldo. Like really? Like who's not gonna buy him? I thought it was sick because we as fans have great respect for Ronaldo. Yeah, there's the haters or whatever. You can't deny he's one of the best. Just one of the best. End of
But
statement.
it was the biggest mistake Juventus could have made, in my opinion.
I mean, dude,
I don't think
this,
if
this,
you're Juventus,
listen,
you
this
are,
is my thing.
because a lot this team now, it was going up, and then I
As a
think
Juventus fan,
Ronaldo, I
as a
think
Juventus
Ronaldo
fan,
kept them here instead of getting
let
to
me
the
make
next
my case
level.
in point, please. So, are you here? Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm here. No worries. I'm listening.
Um, there is not a single fan of a club that when your club's in talking of buying Ronaldo for only $100 million, I don't give a shit who you are. Sorry for the language. I don't care who you are. You could be a Newcastle fan. Like, it doesn't matter. Ronaldo's coming to your club. You're saying yes.
Yeah.
It's literally stupid not to say yes. So my only thing with that is we went from a team being just so close to the league that, yeah, and at the time I was like, wow, we need someone like Ronaldo, Champions League after Champions League after Champions League of experience. You know what I mean? To give us that push.
Yeah, for sure.
And for whatever reason, we're not there at the club. We don't see what goes in and out every day. I know Juve's faced a lot of injuries. Poor Paulo Dybala and Morata were out for a long time this season, which is really sad. They're coming back, but you don't see what goes in every day. Chemistry never looked fantastic. I'm not really sure what was happening, but I'd be watching these games and it's just be all these little things, like a really mistimed pass, and I'd watch Ronaldo literally just like,
Be upset.
and
Yeah.
yeah, rightfully so. Don't get me wrong, rightfully so. And I think for whatever reason, maybe that demotivated players, making Ronaldo upset on the field, whatever it was. I don't know. It was just like their football just wasn't great. And
I
Ronaldo
think
being as good as he was bailing us out. I'm just gonna say he bailed us. He won us the league.
Yeah,
He won us the league.
he won you the league the first time around, but then when Inter came in with that star-studded team, I think that's where Juve should have been, because they were on the cusp of being that. Where if that Inter team didn't disband, still had the same players and improved, they could be Champions League contenders and winning the league again. But as we see again, ownership problems come in and sweep that away. Where, don't get me wrong, biggest Ronaldo fanboy is here. I think he's the best of all time. United legend. I'm so happy he's at United, but the issue you run in is like we see with the Bruno. A lot of your star players are gonna have to succumb to the fact that Ronaldo's there. Absolutely. You're not that guy anymore. Like, it's that meme. You're not that guy, pal.
Yeah. You're not that guy.
I mean, just to sort of wrap it up, is the money in football in ticket prices, I think, is getting ridiculous in Europe now. From what I've been hearing, I know in America we can get some decent priced ones for like the MLS, but
absolutely. But I mean, it's the MLS.
I know.
Whatever.
And then we have the money in football media, and
ridiculous.
I'm 50-50 because
just look at Spain, dude. Just look at Spain.
Because I'm 50-50 because I sort of understand how, like, for example, a ESPN or a Sky Sports, as soon as they buy broadcasting rights to a league, they're automatically in the red, because they have to rely on the views of that league to come in order to make the money back from other stuff within their realm, right?
Of course, that's a business.
But then on the other hand, I
absolutely agree.
But on the other hand, they step in too much with what money does to that actual media, right?
What money does to the game and that's involved, correct? And that's it. I think it's a problem. Because again, everyone's, money's a sensitive subject for everyone. Money's personal to everyone. I get it, But when you look at it from like the big picture, like we don't have them $1 million, $1 billion checks to write. You know what I mean? We just watch the game because it's what we love. That's literally it. And to see money just become this constant talk in football is kind of getting draining, because it just is a problem.
Yeah, because it comes to the point where it's like the solution is like, oh, like a player's not playing right, throw more money at the problem. It's like I think that's why, like, or for example, like when we talked earlier about how like we see these players and we idolize and we ogle over them. I think it's because we've gotten so dumbed down to the idea that a lot of players are just replaceable. Whereas like back then we thought you can never replace a Drogba, you can never replace a Wayne Rooney, you can never replace a Sergio Aguero, a Thierry Henry,
I actually saw
even the likes of like a John Terry. Like no one ever thinks that, or Frank Lampard.
no. I saw a post earlier on Instagram earlier today, and it literally said, "What is the scariest version of a player you can think of?" Right? And one of the things was like long sleeves, gloves, Thierry Henry. You knew that game was just over. It didn't
I don't know,
matter.
bro. That
It was
but yeah, but
skinhead Wayne Rooney.
yeah, I was about to say that that's scary.
That's what I'm saying. Like that's what I'm saying.
Like
Drogba when it came to the final stages of the championships, right? Of
Yeah,
any
I know.
tournament he was in, he just started turning up.
Except against United. I'll take that.
Except against United. You take those. I'm not a Chelsea fan, so it doesn't.
But then against Bayern, poor Yuli again can't defend himself. Bayern, he steps up, but that's So sadly, just to sort of give
Messi before the beard, Ronaldo with the noodle hair, like.
Oh yeah, you saw those
These were just different breeds of that player. They were just on a different level.
Even like someone like a Del Piero, right? That like luscious hair, they slick back. They're about like, yeah, I'm slicking this hair back, but I'm gonna bang one right past you.
That is the guy made me fall in love with the sport.
Oh, for me, it's Wayne Rooney.
I remember walking in on TV, walking in the living room. My dad was watching the game. Scored this beautiful free kick. And I was like, wow, that was
so really? A Juventus free kick? I thought that'd be a Pirlo at that point. Or was that a little bit later?
No, it was a little bit later.
Yeah, no, you know what it was? I'm thinking of the AC Milan free kick he had.
Correct.
Wow.
No, Del Piero scored this beautiful free kick. And I remember just sitting there watching, and I was like, that was so cool. I love this guy. And then he would do the celebration with his tongue out and be like, I was like, wow, this guy's me, dude.
Talk about the original "What's up" meme, bro. Like, what's up?
Facts. He was the OG. He created that.
For me, I think the best way to explain it was I was at my grandfather's house, and us too as Albanians, we know that our grandparents have the Albanian TV, right? So it's like me, like at that time, it was very difficult to get foreign soccer in the households. Yeah. So that was the only way that we could watch it. And like myself, I'm just sitting there in the living room. I'm watching the Manchester derby. It's really intense. And then I see Paul Scholes picks up the ball from the middle, knocks the ball wide to Nani. Nani crosses the ball in. Rooney leaps up for the most insane free kick and bangs it past. And you see him run to that corner, sort of stand in the pose, and the rest is history, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, dude. It's crazy. It's crazy with the 10 seconds of watching accidentally walking into the living room.
Yeah, right? That's what Yuli said it before. It's the beautiful game for a reason.
Beautiful game, man.
And absolutely. On that note, I think if we look at the time, it's time to wrap it up. Guys, I just want to say thank you all for watching. If you stayed, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, give 5 stars, whatever platform you're listening to. Give it a big shout. I very much appreciate you. Nehat, thank you for coming. This is also going to be a shout out to Yuli. We lost him. Poor technical difficulties. His computer crashed, and everything just went totally wrong in 2 seconds. That's in the chat, guys. But at the end of the day, I was just love football, guys. Watch it, enjoy it. Hopefully you learned something from this, and I will see you all next week.
Peace. Bye, guys.